hit the midway mark of the 2020 high school football season. Hard to believe that that's the case. A season we didn't think would happen for the longest time, and here we sit midway through this high school football season. And we're coming to you from Pelham High School, where the Panthers are going to play host to the Chelsea Hornets this Friday night. A week break from region action this week as teams get set to really push for the playoffs here in the next few weeks following this, as they dive back into region play next week, but get a little bit of a break this week, kind of a chance to fine-tune some things as they do head into that second half of the season, looking to punch a ticket into the 2020 high school football playoffs. Welcome, everybody. I'm Alec Etheridge, the managing editor here at the Shelby County Reporter. This is the Shelby County High School Football Show, and we're here to get you geared up for another week of high school football across the area, and coming off yet another exciting week of high school football action. And you just look back at what happened last week. We had number 1 versus number 2 there in Class 7A Region 3. The Thompson Warriors take down the Hewitt-Trussville Huskies on national television, ESPNU, 35-21. A strong showing from the Warriors in that game, 35 first-half points. The offense continues to roll along, and they don't get a break. This week, another strong defensive opponent, another strong opponent in general. The second time this season they will take on the number 1 6A team. Earlier this year beat Oxford 56-34. Now they get number 1 Mountain Brook, looking to replicate that success that they had earlier this season against the Yellow Jackets. So another difficult opponent. We'll talk about that game, obviously, on the show. We'll talk about the game that's going to happen right here at Pelham High School, our game of the week between the Panthers and the Hornets, former region rivals, and now they're not in the same region, but nonetheless, these two teams definitely want to give it their all and pick up a big win in this matchup. So we'll talk about that game as well off the bat here in just a minute. But some news that has come across here in the last hours. I record this on Monday afternoon. The Briarwood Lions, they had originally been scheduled to play Mortimer Jordan this Friday night. That game got canceled due to COVID-19, so they pick up a forfeit win this Friday. Nonetheless, they tried to get a game going against McAdory. That game was scheduled last Friday. It has since been canceled. So now Briarwood will travel down to 7A James Clemens. It'll be the second 7A team that Briarwood has taken on this season, but a good challenge for them. You look at that as a true test. It's a game that on paper isn't going to mean anything, so they can go out there. They don't have to worry about the outcome, but gives them a true test going into the second half of region play, where they still have number 1 Mountain Brook on the schedule, and a game like this can really help prepare them for that Mountain Brook matchup, as really that's the most difficult test they have left moving forward, and I think that's going to be for the region championship there in Class 6A Region 3. They still have Homewood left on the schedule, a couple other difficult matchups, but with what they did against Huffman, that matchup against Briarwood is going to be the difficult one. Against Mountain Brook is going to be the difficult one moving forward. So we'll talk about a little bit about James Clemens Briarwood here on the show, as well as some other games. But Montevallo Vincent, that game has also been canceled. That was a game both of these teams had a chance to play this week because of COVID-19 playing havoc on their schedule. But the state kind of stepped in and said that game wasn't going to be able to be played because of other games they've had to forfeit this year. So it's not a COVID-19 related cancellation, but one that the state stepped in and said cannot happen due to unforeseen scheduling circumstances. So those two, we're going to hope to split the gate, get some money back from having to cancel games this season, but will no longer be able to play one another this Friday night. But still plenty of action to talk about. We're going to dive in, talk about all the games, talk about our SCR Stars of the week at the end of the show. But we're going to start right here at Pelham High School as the Panthers play host to the Hornets. This game's going to be a big one for multiple reasons, and kind of for different reasons on each side when you look at this matchup. The Chelsea Hornets, obviously coming off a bye week last week and much needed. This is a team that scored 3 points or less in 3 of their 4 games so far this season. The offense has struggled mightily. Their only win on the season, a 27-23 victory against the Helena Huskies, which was a very good showing. That's a solid Helena team, so a strong effort there in that one. Now it's just about getting consistency, and this extra bye week that they had coming into this matchup should be able to help them out, kind of figure out, fine-tune some things on the offensive side of the football, because so far it's really been Collier Blair, and that's been just about it on the offensive side for the Chelsea Hornets. They've got to find some different weapons to step up, particularly at quarterback up front on the offensive line. Those two positions are going to be key for this offense moving forward, especially into this game, because this is a chance for them to gain some confidence going into the second half of region play. And now for the Pelham Panthers, this marks a chance where you don't want to lose the momentum that you have so far. Coming off a bye week now with that forfeit win against Helena last week, this is a Pelham team the week before that beat Stanhope Elmore 35-25, and arguably, in my opinion, that was their most difficult game on the schedule. So now it's all up here. It's all in their heads. If they don't get complacent, if they can keep focused, then the sky's the limit for this team this year. They could easily win the region championship moving forward, but this is an important week in that step toward that process, but mainly because you don't want to lose that confidence and take a step back going into region play. So this is not a region matchup, but still very important to keep the momentum, keep the train heading in the right direction if you're a Pelham Panther. And so far, the reason they've been so successful, one, they've shown a lot of improvement on both sides of the ball. The defense this year also a lot better than it has been the last several years. This is still a team that's full of young talent. A lot of guys on this team, still sophomores and juniors, which shows that the future is going to be extremely bright. Next year, this could be a state championship contending team if they continue to improve on this path. But going into this matchup, their offense is what you have to love. What you've seen from them so far this season, Dylan Peterson at running back, and then obviously Gabe Gamble as well. Two guys that can easily top the century mark each and every week. Peterson's done it 3 weeks in a row, and Gamble's done it in 2 of their 4 games. So that's an impressive mark for both of those running backs in the backfield. You look at Will Langford, what he's been able to do at quarterback, improving each and every week of the season, able to really run the ball well from the quarterback position. His arm's getting better and better. He's got tons of weapons all over the field, including those 2 running backs, but also guys like Walker Lyles, Chase Christian, Darius Copeland, just so much talent athletically on this Pelham offense, and that's the key going into this game. You want to keep that offense rolling along, obviously get out of this game healthy, but at the same time, you've got so much talent that you're going to give it your all in this one. Continue to have that momentum going in the right direction. And you know, this is an offense that the way they've played so far this season, especially the last couple of weeks, 49 against Calera, 35 points against Stanhope Elmore, 2 pretty solid teams this year, especially Stanhope Elmore to put up 35 on the Mustangs in that game. That shows how talented your offense is. And going up against a Chelsea team that's only put up 3 points or less in 3 of their games so far this season, no more than 27, you got to think if Pelham can get to 30-plus points in this game, they've got to feel good about their chances. The way that this offense is playing, I think that's a very realistic mark to set for themselves going into the game. Now, Chelsea's defense is the best part of their team by far. This is a secondary that is extremely talented. They're getting better at every position on that side of the ball. And you look at what they've done defensively, they really aren't giving up much more than 20 points per game, despite being on the field 90% of the game. The offense is not getting them off of the field so far this season. So if Chelsea's offense can sustain some drives, keep that defense fresh, then you may get a lower scoring game in this battle, and that's exactly what Chelsea would want. If they can get out here, control the game on the ground with Collier Blair, make it a running attack between the 2 teams, then you get in a lower scoring battle, and that's what Chelsea's going to want. That's what gives them a better chance to win this game. I also think that coming off a bye week, that benefits Chelsea a little bit more. Pelham had so much momentum going into that game against Helena last week, and then it gets canceled. You get a little dejected that you don't get to play that rivalry matchup. So they got to keep their focus coming off such a momentous start to the season, whereas Chelsea really needed that break to get some confidence back, kind of fine-tune some things where they were making some mistakes in different areas, especially on that offensive side. So I do think you're going to see a more inspired Chelsea offense. I think that could make this game a little bit closer. But at the end of the day, when you have as much talent as Pelham does on the offensive side of the football, it's tough to see them losing this matchup. I think they should be the favorites. I think they have the chance to win the region championship, so it's tough to go against them really in this game and moving forward. But what I'm going to keep my eye on this week is seeing how they handle things, how they handle that pressure of now being really the top dogs in their region, sitting atop the region standings. If they can handle that well against a rival in an in-county matchup this week, they're going to handle it well moving forward with the rest of their matchups as well. So nonetheless, these 2 county teams, always fun to watch them compete against each other. no telling what can happen when they get on the field and go after it. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch these two compete on Friday night as the Pelham Panthers play host to the Chelsea Hornets in our game of the week. There's really no easy week on the schedule for the Thompson Warriors, and certainly not this week against the Mountain Brook Spartans, the number one team in 6A. That's the second time this year, as we talked about earlier, that Thompson's going to take on the number one team in the 6A classification this year. And when you look at that, I mean, the schedule is just so difficult throughout, especially playing in Class 7A Region 3 and coming off a matchup against number 2 7A team in Hewitt-Trussville, a game that was nationally televised. And Thompson, they looked good. They continued to roll along, especially on the offensive side of the football, putting up 35 points against a Hewitt-Trussville defense that had not given up more than 19 in a game this year against some pretty talented offenses so far this season. And that was an offense in Hewitt-Trussville that had scored 40-plus points in every game this season, and Thompson shut them down to 21. If it weren't for 2, 3, 4 in that range of explosive plays, Armani Goodwin had a couple of big explosive plays as well as their other running back. If it weren't for those big plays, Thompson would have had a shutout in that game. There were just a couple of bad mistakes, a bad kickoff mistake where Hewitt-Trussville was able to recover a fumble, and one play later, Goodwin reels off a 33-yard touchdown. So just fixing those mistakes is going to go a long way for Thompson moving forward, because that's the only thing keeping this team really from being perfect so far this year. You've had some of those mistakes on the defensive side of the ball, on special teams, and the offense really, they've played pretty flawless for the most part. Last week in the second half, a little bit quiet, but they wanted to get out of there with the win. They had a good lead at halftime, and they didn't want to worry about relinquishing that up 35-14. So they didn't really need to do much offensively in the second half last week. So this is a week where I think they're going to try to put everything together, get that confidence going into the second half, and really they should be favored in the rest of their games until that showdown late in the year. The final region game likely going to be for the region championship when they play host to the Hoover Buccaneers, and that game I believe will be a 1 versus 2 matchup at the time, unless one of them drops a game between now and then, but it's hard to see that happening as talented as both have looked so far this season. But this is going to be a difficult week yet again for Thompson, as they do get another top contender, this time in the 6A classification. Oxford sits at number 2 right now. They were number 1 earlier in the season. Thompson won that game 56-34. So you have to feel like they have a good chance again in this one against Mountain Brook. And the reason that I feel confident Thompson really can pull away in this game is, one, because of what we've seen offensively. I don't care how good your defense is. At the high school level, when you're able to spread the ball out to so many different athletes, and Thompson's got 2-3 different running backs that can reel off 100 yards in a game. They've got 4 receivers, a couple of which are just really speedy, athletic guys, and then you've got J.B. Mitchell and Trey Roberson, who are that, and then they can go downfield and go up and make jump ball catches as well. So it's so difficult at the high school level for a defense to be able to guard that many players that honestly will probably be playing Division I college football. So that's what gives you a benefit if you're Thompson. Obviously, the offense is going to continue to roll. They showed last week they could put points up on a good defense. This is a Mountain Brook defense that is probably the best they've faced. I would say it's somewhat similar to Hewitt-Trussville, and I'm going to compare Mountain Brook entirely to Hewitt-Trussville because their defense is good, but the offense very similar in the fact that they tend to run the ball a lot. They're very one-dimensional on that side of the ball, but in particular, they're just not going to have much of a pass game. And when you do that against a Thompson defense that looks to be gaining a ton of confidence each and every week and getting better and better, starting to form into shape of the defense we expected coming into the season as the state's best, that's what makes this team difficult. The offense is going to score points. We know that much. And when you're a Mountain Brook, a team that's gone into the half in low-scoring games, they struggled to score 7 points both of the last 2 weeks in their previous 2 matchups. So this week, you go into this matchup, you look at that. If Mountain Brook struggles to score in the first half, you're looking at a Thompson team that's likely going to go into the halftime with a 21-point lead. And at that point, if your offense is struggling, it's going to be so difficult to come back, not only because Thompson can continue to put up points offensively, but because of what they can do defensively as well. So you look at that matchup this week, I think Thompson should be a heavy favorite. Nonetheless, it is a number 1 versus number 1 matchup, 2 different classifications, but still going to be a difficult battle for the Warriors as far as that task of taking on likely their most difficult defensive opponent so far this season. So it should be interesting to watch. You want to see Thompson continue to improve moving forward. This is a week they can't sleep on as they do head into region play. The second half of region play the week after with some big matchups moving forward. So I expect Thompson to continue to roll that offense, just continue to look as impressive as it has all season behind Connor Harrell there at quarterback, and what Mark Freeman's able to do with that offense as well. It's so difficult to stop, and I don't expect that to change this week. So we'll see what happens on the field, but Thompson plays host to Mountain Brook. Should be another strong week for the Warriors. Calera Eagles are coming off just their second region win in the last 3 seasons a couple weeks ago as they took down Chilton County in a 24-21 game. And the most impressive thing about Calera so far this season is what they've been able to do in the second half of football games. The last couple of years, that's where they've struggled. The defense has looked exhausted in the second half. They've been in games, and then they just give up so many points in the third and fourth quarter that they can't hang around. And the offense, just because a lot of guys were playing both sides of the ball, they couldn't do very much either. So there was just pure exhaustion in the second half. But going into this season, head coach Trey Simpson told me that they were going to try, even with some of those younger guys, they've got a lot of freshmen and sophomores on that team, that they were going to try to play at least 2 deep at every position so that they wouldn't be as exhausted. And they may have some growing pains throughout the year, but at the end of the year, they were going to have that experience, and almost everybody's going to be back next year. So it was going to be a big benefit. But what you're seeing so far is they're sort of blossoming a little bit early. You've got a lot of these young guys, particularly on the offensive side with that talent. They're so athletic there at Calera. Their numbers are up. They're starting to look like a 6A program. And then 2 weeks ago, picking up that win against Chilton County was huge for their momentum, and technically have 2 wins on the season now, which is more than they've had the last 2 years. 1 win in each of the last 2 seasons. One of those wins this year obviously is a forfeit. They technically lost that same week to number 1 Mountain Brook 31-14. But when you lose to the number 1 team that's got such a good defense, 31-14, and you score all 14 points in the second half and don't give up any points in the second half, that shows your growth. Same against Demopolis, the closest they've ever played them to open the season, lose 14-12. Against these Pelham Panthers, they lose 49-41, but such a strong second half comeback. And then obviously against Chilton County, we're able to do some things late in the fourth quarter to win that game as well. And now they get a Pell City team, and I think they're the favorite. I think Calera goes into this game as the favorite to win, and I don't know that I felt confident in them doing that in a couple of years, to be honest with you. Now I'm seeing the growth there. These guys are still young, so you don't know what you're going to get each and every week. There could be a lapse. This could be a week where they do struggle a little bit, but you're starting to see the belief there of those young players. Tyler Nelson at quarterback, Kobe Prentice at receiver, Chris Cotton at running back, so many other guys stepping up and just making plays week in and week out and getting better and better each week of the season as well. And they're becoming difficult to stop, especially on that offensive side late in games. But it's just so refreshing to see their defense step up in the second half as well. And you look at their losses this year. They lose to Demopolis by 2 points. They lose to a 4-1 Pelham team by 8 points, and they lose to the number 1 team in 6A by 17 points. And now they get a Pell City team that's sitting at 1-3 on the season, and they've scored 20 or less in every game on the season. So you got to feel good about the Panthers' chances as long as they continue to show that improvement. If they improve from what they did against Chilton County to be a little bit better in this game against Pell City, there's no doubt in my mind that they win this football game, but they've got to continue to do that. That's the big thing for a young team, is keeping their focus, not letting them get a little bit too far ahead of themselves and stay within the moment. If they can continue to focus on each week, each day, this is a Calera team that's going to battle for a playoff spot. And coming into the season, we just didn't think that was going to be a real possibility. I thought in the next 2 years they could be a strong contender for a deep playoff run. But to be in that situation this year with a sophomore starting quarterback, so many freshmen, sophomores, and juniors in your starting rotation, starting lineup there at Calera, it's just been a tremendous thing to see. Head coach Trey Simpson doing a fantastic job there with the Eagles in his second year. And you got to remember, last year he took over in July. They didn't have much time for preparation, still just weren't ready yet. They won 1 game a season ago, 1 game 2 years ago. Now this year, already 2 wins, and I think it's going to become 3 wins on Friday night. Not a region game, but this is a game that continues to build momentum. The schedule gets very difficult the rest of the way for Calera, but with what we've seen in their region, no team looks to be fantastic so far. Pelham's by far been the favorite so far this season. Calera only lost that game by 8 points, so you got to like what you've seen from the Eagles. I think they're going to have a strong push toward a playoff spot, and that's going to start this week if they can continue that momentum in the right direction. This game literally just came up minutes before I started recording the show. The Briarwood Lions now going to travel south to take on James Clemens this Friday night. It's a game that is going to be more of an exhibition-type game. Briarwood's already picked up a forfeit win against Mortimer Jordan in a non-region game on Friday due to COVID-19. The Lions originally scheduled to travel there. Then they were going to play at McAdory this Friday night. That game got canceled just a little while ago, and now we head into a matchup this Friday with James Clemens, in an exciting matchup nonetheless. Through all of that, they get to take on a 7A opponent this Friday night, and a 7A opponent that's played really strong offensively the last few weeks, scoring 50-plus points in one game, 35 in another, 28 in another. So 3 weeks of solid offensive play. This is a James Clemens team that sits at 3-2 on the season. One of those a forfeit loss, so they've won 3 of the last 4 games so far this season heading into this matchup with Briarwood. Now, the interesting thing to watch in this matchup, obviously that classification difference. Briarwood a year ago sitting in 5A, now jumped up to 6A, taking on a 7A team. So a year ago, this would have been a 2-classification jump football game for the Lions. That's always a tough thing to compete in. But we saw what Spain Park did what Briarwood did against Spain Park earlier in the season. They were up 14-0 against the Jags, a Jags team that has a pretty strong offense, only had 1 third-down conversion there in the first half of that football game. Second half, they were 9-9 on third downs, converted a couple of fourth-down conversions as well. Went on to score 21 unanswered points and win that game 21-14, but 2 third-down stops in that second half, and Briarwood likely goes on to win that football game against Spain Park, a tough 7A opponent. So I think you're going to see something similar in this matchup. I think you're going to see Briarwood's defense, which is giving up 12 points per game so far this season, sitting at 4-1 on the year so far. This has just been an impressive showing each week from the Lions, coming off another big win last week, a win against a former 7A team in Huffman. They looked strong from the start. They looked like the better team from start to finish in that football game as they go on to pick up a 28-16 win against the Vikings in that one. And what that did, that was probably those between Huffman, Mountain Brook, and Briarwood, probably the top 3 teams in that region. So with that win against Huffman, Briarwood is still sitting undefeated in region play, atop the region standings with Mountain Brook, the number 1 team. That cements Briarwood as a true contender there for the top spot in that region. That game going to take place here in a few weeks between the Spartans and the Lions. And this is another, like I said at the top of the show, a game that can really give Briarwood some confidence against another solid opponent going into the second half of region play. If they can win this one, man, you better watch out. This is a team that could not only beat Mountain Brook and win the region championship, but could easily compete for a state championship as well. Coming into the season, I thought that jump up a classification might be too much. I thought they would hit maybe the 3 spot in the playoffs, but now they look like not only a top 2 spot, but maybe a chance to take the number 1 spot in the region. Taking on James Clemens this Friday. The defensive Briarwood against the offensive James Clemens will be the fun thing to watch. If Briarwood can put together another strong defensive showing against a solid offense that's a classification higher, then you have to like their chances the rest of the way, and I don't doubt that they'll do it. This is a Briarwood defense that's been tremendous all season long. They forced 5 turnovers last week in different facets of the game. Just so much fun to watch what they're able to do on that side of the ball. Alistair Harris and Parker Hudson and Tyler Wall just continue to be strong forces on that side of the ball. And you look at what the offense is doing each and every week too. Christopher Vizina, man, he is a sophomore quarterback right now. He's starting to get more and more attention. He's a playmaker that can make so many good throws, and once his receivers really start to come along, this is a team that becomes not just they're a good defensive football team. This becomes a team that, wow, they're one of the best football teams in the state. And you look at what Eli Stedman's been able to do, Nick Dyson, as well as Brooks Donnelly, who's really been the lead guy there at receiver. They continue to get more and more confidence each week, and as that happens, pair that offense with that defense. Luke Rebels there at running back is able to go over 100 yards last week, is something he can do most weeks of the season. So if you continue to see that progress, that success on offense, match it with that defense, this becomes a very dangerous football team. They pair that against James Clemens Friday night. That's a sign of things to come, and I think we're going to see a solid performance from Briarwood in this one as they get that confidence continuing to go in the right direction ahead of a strong push for the region championship. An absolutely huge game for these two teams as Shelby County is going to place host to Chilton County this Friday night in Columbiana. And you look at this matchup, the reason it's so big is we've seen some recent struggles from both teams so far this season, and they're going into a stretch where they need some big wins, particularly Shelby County. The second half of their region schedule, they should be able to win all of them, but they need to get their confidence up. They need to start heading in the right direction if they want to do so, and that's going to start largely with the offense showing some improvement, which I think we saw a little bit of last week. The defense kind of took a step back, but that said, held a very good Demopolis team to 28 points through 3 quarters of play. This is a team in Shelby County that was within 8 against Demopolis going into that fourth quarter, ended up losing that game by giving up 20 unanswered there in the fourth quarter, which was a tough way to go down in that one, but showed some fight nonetheless in that matchup after a tough stretch of football games. But this is still a Shelby County team that has shown some promise, strong promise on the defensive side of the football, much better than we expected them to be this year. Hoped for some improvement on that side of the ball, but they've gone above and beyond what we expected. So now it's up to the offense. The offense has underperformed this year. Last week, that's a Demopolis team that has one of the better defenses in Class 5A. So to put up 20 points, not bad. Now it's time to build off of that moving forward. You look at what this offense did before that. They had really struggled so far this season. If that was the turning point against a solid team to show that you had some promise and were making some progress, then moving forward, they shouldn't lose. The defense has played well enough so far this season that they're going into a stretch of schedule against teams that are struggling on the offensive side, struggling in general, that they should be able to shut them down defensively, but the offense is going to have to take advantage of that. You can't get in any more low-scoring games. You've got to score 20 or more in every game. You do that, the way the defense is playing, then Shelby County should have no problem winning out the rest of the way, and that starts this Friday. This is a Chilton County team that's sitting at 1-3 overall. They are up a classification in 6A, but they've struggled so far this season, and that's what's going to be key in this matchup. If Shelby County can take advantage of a struggling team, show that they're the better team this year, then they'll have a chance to pick up a big win on Friday night against the Tigers. But it's going to have to start with that offense taking advantage of a little bit of momentum built last week against a very good football team, while the defense has to continue to play up to what it's done so far this season. Shelby County is a playoff team this year. They have to decide how high of a seed they want to be moving forward. They should take that to heart. They should play their hearts out the rest of the way. I think you're going to see a strong, motivated Wildcats team moving forward. Wouldn't be surprised if they win this game, and that starts the winning streak the rest of the year. With the Montevallo-Vincent game canceled, that leaves us with our AISA and ACSC games this week. Cornerstone, they're going to be taking on Abbeville Academy, and then Evangel's going to be taking on Lighthouse Homeschool. So 2 matchups there for both those teams. Cornerstone's matchup going to be a little bit more difficult, still struggling. The last 2 weeks, they've picked up a forfeit win and a forfeit loss due to COVID-19, so we'll see where they are. They should be fresh, but they hadn't had a chance to get any offensive confidence so far this season, taking on a team that's looked pretty good with their only loss coming to a ranked team in the AISA standings. So you expect this to be another difficult matchup for Cornerstone, but still some chances on the schedule for them to pick up some wins. We'll see if they're able to get some confidence, what that's like this Friday night there in that matchup. And Evangel, probably their most difficult matchup to this point in the season, but nonetheless, they sit at 4-0, another big win last Friday night. They're taking on a Lighthouse team that now sits at 3-0. and probably the most difficult offense that they've faced this year. But this still 8-man football, Evangel's the king right now. It's tough to see them struggling in this one. They've scored 40 or more in every game and given up 20 or less in every game. So I expect that trend to continue, even against the Lighthouse team that has shown some impressiveness so far this season. Evangel just beat Freedom Academy last week 43-20, where we saw Lighthouse struggle to win that game in a tight one, 52-48. So if that head-to-head shows anything, it's that Evangel should continue their trend, have a strong chance to improve to 5-0. Now it's time to give out some stars to our SCR Stars of the Week. Another strong week of region action. Several players stepped up, including a big nationally televised game. Thompson wasn't scared of the spotlight. Their players stepped up on both sides of the ball, probably playing their best game of the season against the number 2 Hewitt-Trussville Huskies. And you have to start with Connor Harrell, quarterback there for the Warriors, just continues to get better and better each week of the season. 17 of 23, 325 yards, and 4 touchdowns there for Thompson. All of that pretty much in the first half against the Huskies defense. The defense had only given up 19 or less in every game so far this season, and Thompson rolled in and put up 35 in the first half. And Harold just continues to impress, a junior, and he buys so much time in the pocket. He's able to escape, get out, but he can run the football. He has some speed. He's an athletic playmaker, but his first thought isn't to do that. He is keeping his eyes down the field, and what that's done, and like I said earlier, in high school football, so difficult to guard defensively when you have so much talent on the field. He knows he has talent at receiver, pretty much 4 wide. Every spot on the offense at receiver is talented, and he's keeping his eyes downfield. And what he's done is he's finding players. I mean, after roaming around for 10 seconds sometimes, he's able to find somebody downfield wide open for a touchdown. And then you've also got players that are just making tremendous plays. You look at what Ryan Pepins did last week, and one of his touchdown catches just sprinted straight by everybody and was wide open. Harrell lofted the ball, and it was perfectly placed for a lengthy touchdown, I believe around 66 yards in that one. Just a beautiful touchdown pass there. Pepins finished the game with 136 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns on just 4 catches, which shows his explosiveness there on the offensive side of the ball. So he's another SCR star as well. But beyond that, for that Thompson offense, Jarrett Crockett, what a heart and gutsy effort. Injured going into that matchup, but he wanted to play, and he came out and put together an impressive performance, putting up 119 yards and a touchdown on 21 carries, and he was a bulldozer. He was plowing through that Hewitt-Trussville defense, which was impressive to watch. For the defense for Thompson, Jax Van Zant stepped up in a big way, forced a fumble late to kill a Hewitt-Trussville drive that was going in, probably was going to make it a one-possession game there. They're able to score on that drive in Thompson territory, and he forced a fumble that was recovered by E.J. Edwards. Had 11 tackles in that game with that forced fumble, so a strong performance for Jax Van Zant, who a lot of people focus on Jeremiah Alexander and a few others on that defense, but those Jeremiah Alexander and Jax Van Zant, the 2 leaders really there at linebacker, both of them very solid playmakers, and Jax Van Zant deserves his credit. He is every bit as talented as most players on that side of the ball, one of the best linebackers in the state, and I think people are going to start to realize that as the season goes along. But Alexander, obviously another strong game, 3.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack in that game, around 7 total tackles, continues to lead overall and be a force in the backfield, as does Tony Mitchell, 6 tackles, 1 tackle for loss in that game against Hewitt-Trussville. But I think the fan favorite last week was none other than Tristan Woody, their linebacker that stepped up and made the game-saving, not the game-saving, but just a huge interception late in that contest. Hewitt-Trussville, again, kind of like Jax's fumble, forced fumble. Hewitt-Trussville was driving again, looking to make it a one-possession game late there in the fourth quarter to have a shot, and Woody comes up with a big interception. And he didn't just finish with that interception. He was the second leading tackler in the game, had 8 total tackles and a tackle for loss for the Thompson Warriors. So a strong showing there from Tristan Woody in that game, and we saw how excited the sideline got for that one. And, of course, Jake Gaines going crazy there. Looked like he was upset and angry at him, but was just going nuts celebrating. They had a fun moment there on the sideline. So a big moment there for Tristan Woody as he stepped up and shown that he can be another one of those solid defenders in a defense that's just endless, seemingly endless there for the Thompson Warriors. So a strong overall showing from so many players on both sides of the ball for the Warriors in that 35-21 win against Hewitt-Trussville. For the Spain Park Jaguars, a tough loss to Gadsden City. They put together a strong comeback attempt, however, and Jalen Ward was a big reason why. He had 128 yards on 6 receptions and a touchdown there for the Spain Park Jaguars in that comeback attempt that fell up short. Oak Mountain, Judah Tate, he had another strong performance going up against the Hoover Buccaneers, the number 3 team. They were physical. They played such a good football game against this Oak Mountain team, but Judah Tate stepped up, still went over the century mark, had 124 yards on 23 carries against a very physical football team. So he's gone over 100 yards in just about every game so far this season. So impressive stuff so far from Judah Tate midway through the 2020 season. He's going to be a big reason if he stays healthy. He and Evan Smith there in the backfield, a huge reason that Oak Mountain would be able to make the playoffs this year, and I think they've got a strong shot to do that. Obviously, in a couple weeks, that big game against Spain Park. At Briarwood, they just continue to impress on both sides of the ball, particularly defensively. You see what Alistair Harris has done. 2 interceptions last week. Tyler Wall, Parker Hudson. The entire defense is loaded with talent. Those 3 have been the leaders so far, but several other guys as well have stepped up. And then offensively, Luke Rebel's continuing to get better and better each week. They're trying to do some different things offensively, but he continues to be the leader of that side of the ball. He had 99 yards rushing with a touchdown, close to 130 yards all-purpose in that game as well. So a solid playmaker there for the Lions. And our last SCR star for the second week in a row, we've got a Vincent Yellowjacket. They didn't have a game the first 3 weeks of the season, forfeited those first 3. Last 2 weeks, they've won both of their matchups by 7 points with comeback victories. Obviously, 2 weeks ago against Horseshoe Bend, 39-32, and last week against Fayetteville, 41-34. And Jamari Lawson is a huge reason why. I mean, absolutely massive. Head coach Lucas Weatherford told me that he was going to be a breakout player for them this year, in addition to Tay McGregor, who had a strong year last year. But Lawson has stepped up, has become a huge go-to playmaker there. He had 17 carries for 202 yards and 3 touchdowns for the Vincent Yellowjackets, now sitting at 2-3 overall, but more importantly, 2-1 in region play. And he's a huge reason why, going for over 100 yards in each of their first 2 head-to-head football games so far. So those are our SCR Stars of the Week. Another strong showing from those players. Hit the midway point of the season. We're starting to see which players are kind of stepping up and standing out each week, but I still expect to see plenty of new faces as we move forward, and some of these continued faces in each of our SCR Stars of the Week segments as we head down the stretch in some important region games looking for that playoff push. That's going to do it for this week's Shelby County High School football show. Hope you all enjoyed it. Appreciate you for tuning in. And it's going to be a quiet week on Friday night. We only have 5 AHSAA games and then 2 others with Cornerstone and Evangel. So not a ton of action. Nonetheless, it's a break from region play. A lot of fun for these guys. They get to continue along on this trek during the 2020 season that has brought some unknown and some unexpected, but we're playing football, which we didn't know we would get, and we're halfway home as we get set for a strong push toward the end of the regular season and get set up for some playoff runs here with Shelby County football team. So going to be a fun week. It's going to be highlighted by this game here clearly between Pelham and Chelsea, that game down the road at Thompson between the Spartans and the Warriors, and a couple of other big matchups as well. So still a lot of fun ahead this Friday night. We'll be here to break it all down on our pregame show live from Pelham on Friday night, get you geared up for the games, have a fantastic night of coverage ahead. And then next week, obviously, we'll be back with the show, getting you geared up for a big slate of region action, and it's going to get going again with a lot of action-packed fun moving forward. So I appreciate you all for tuning in. Until Friday night, I'm Alec Etheridge.